All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to just check really quick and make sure that JB's on. Let's see. Yep, he is. Okay. So welcome to the August National Natural Resources Conservation Service State Technical Advisory Committee meeting. For any of you who have not joined us before, our agenda for today is we're going to have a welcome from our acting director, JB Martin, and some news that he wants to share. And then we have a guest speaker who is going to present on her conservation innovation grant project, restoring ecosystem services and biodiversity through cost-effective and resilient agroforestry systems. We'll do some updates, have some reports from our subcommittees, and then open the floor up for other business, and then just review when our next meeting is. So I'm going to turn the floor over to JB Martin, our acting director.
I'd just like to say welcome to each and every one of you, and thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to participate in the STAC meeting. I've been on a few of these, but I haven't really said much. But one of the things that I wanted to mention that, as we take a look at our operations from the NRCS standpoint, is that we're trying to do everything that we can, to meet the needs of the individual producers, farmers, landowners, ranchers that we serve in CIA. And I think it was mentioned, it wasn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Susan or anybody else, but I think, we're trying to make sure that we have, the adequate participation that we need. And what I mean by that is that, we have those group entities that we work with or we don't work with to cover all the natural resource concerns, elements of conservation and natural resources that we try to instill in our day-to-day operations. So if there's anybody out there that you all are familiar with that should be participating, make sure that they're aware. I know some of you already done that, but we want to be all inclusive. We don't want to exclude anybody, the opportunity to have their voice heard as it relates to technical systems as well as program implementation. And so with that, with the Farm Bill input session that's going on, just recently on Monday, the ranking member of the House, along with the chairman, announced an online forum to submit their comments on the next Farm Bill. And so that's all inclusive. We've even done a little bit of that ourselves. Some of our partners have inquired about things as it relates to CIA, some of our circumstances, our challenges, our struggles, and we've been trying to elect some of the staff to provide some of that information for me so I can send it up the pipeline. Even some of our local congressional members have asked for that information as well. So we try to do the best job that we can to make sure, our voice is heard once again. Like I've told the staff and others that I've had an opportunity to meet from our travels as it relates to Hawaii/CIA, from a distance, if you're not familiar with this place, you don't really understand some of the constraints that are had on PIA in order to do the most effective job we can as it relates to protecting and serving our natural resources here. So once again, if there's anybody out there that should be participating that you're aware of through your working relationships through the years, through the time and presentations and projects, let them know that they have an open invitation to participate in this particular meeting. So in preparation relates to the process of the 18 Farm Bill, and along with the preparation for the 23 Farm Bill, getting that input from our producers and stakeholders and consumers of how those programs are working for them if they're not. That's what we're taking a look at for PIA. So I just want to make sure that everyone is made aware of that. I'm looking forward to the guest speaker's presentation, and we just want to address the challenges that we have to implement our Farm Bill. So as you move forward. Next slide, please.
So you're really fuzzy again today. So are you talking about the feral swine now?
Yes. Am I fuzzy?
Okay.
Or can you hear me?
Yeah, you're kind of fuzzy. It's a little hard to understand you.
You want me to start over?
That's what I did last time.
Okay, no problem. How am I now? Am I halfway decent now?
Oh,
You can't hear me.
better.
Okay. Um, Once again, welcome and thank you for taking the time out in your busy schedule to participate in the STAC meeting today. As I stated in my first round, I participated in a few STAC meetings since my tenure here is going on 4 months, and I thoroughly enjoyed the feedback and the communication and the conversation that's being had. Um, I want to make sure that with this opportunity, participating in the STAC, that we cover all our bases. And I know sometimes that can be a challenge, but we want to make sure that we get all the people at the table that have a significant voice in conservation, natural resources, water quality, and the whole 9 yards, and PIA. That's for white. And if there are individuals out there that are not at the table participating in the STAC from your working relationship as a result of the work that you do on a day-to-day basis, please invite them, send them an invite to make sure that we can capture the different things that we're working on. I've had an opportunity to visit a lot of different locations throughout CIA and heard voices and things that continuing to be a problematic as far as implementation in certain aspects for CIA. And we just want to make sure, I keep reiterating the fact that I tell the staff a lot of times that, you know, our way of process operating might be a little different, but for those of us that are not from PIA/Hawaii, we hear a lot about the activity out here, but seeing is believing. So trying to educate people on what it actually takes to get the job done is very valuable for people to understand that and for us to collect as much data and information that we can to educate people on the circumstances that we face on a day-to-day basis. So that's very important to the overall cause, preserving our natural resources here. And so utilizing this format as a STAC is one of the best opportunities that we can utilize to make that happen. Along with that, with the upcoming 23 Farm Bill and providing input for that on Monday, the ranking member and the chairman they announced an online forum for that. And as I stated earlier, we haven't participated in the forum because of being NSF employees, but we've had a lot of requests for submittal of particular challenges and circumstances that we face in CIA to present to some of our partners, resident folks, and state partners, national partners that are related to the National Association of Conservation Districts. So I encourage you all to take advantage of the opportunity, make those comments, because once again, it's all about having our voice heard out here and understanding the impact that we have on food and production throughout not only Pacific Islands, but for the country as a whole. I mean, a lot of people come here for the pleasures, but a lot of people, when they come here, they don't understand the impact that PIA has on, the day-to-day activities for our food and fiber. So that's very vital to the overall scope of what we do. And so once again, I strongly encourage your participants of the STAC to encourage others to participate as well. Next slide, Susan. Is that better? No?
A little bit. We need to get you a better microphone.
Sorry about that. Next up, Sarah Ungum. And where I've been, this has been an ongoing issue. We've had some round debates, Susan and I and other staff, as far as our role, our responsibility in addressing this particular issue. And we've had some discussions that centered around, we have, specific practices that we dedicate to address this, right? And so, but, the scope of doing that, stated that it's not our ultimate responsibility to address this particular issue. But, I'm not going to say, it is, but I'm not going to say it's not, because we should do almost everything that we can to address this issue because of the destruction of the conservation practices that we install on our farms and ranches throughout CIA. So we're trying to take a look at, a better way to protect the landscape as a result of these particular issues brought into soil erosion and water quality and destruction of our native habitat, and plus, of course, our water quality. So we're looking for some creative ways to do that. We've been in communication, state, with folks of that nature, and some opportunities to potentially maybe go into some agreements to partner to help us out with that. We also put in a request from our Central National Technical Support Center located in Fort Worth with some significant opportunities to help us out, to come up with plans to help us assist along those terms as well. So if there's anybody that has a different perspective as far as how we can approach that, we're all ears and listening to those particular options to help us move forward in some of our implementation and technical assistance to help reduce combat the ever invasive feral onward situation in the state of Hawaii. So I strongly encourage you to provide those. We'll send those by way of Susan, or if you want to send those to me directly, we can do that either way. So as long as we can, garner enough, support to get that information and come up with a plan to address that particular element. So the recommendations for this and the conservation practices associated will be effective. Identify part of resource concerns. Hopefully we can develop a subcommittee and interested parties to contact Susan. And we're open to all particular, suggestions and comments and concerns as it relates to that. So looking forward to your participation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, JB. Next, we're going to have the presentation by Leah Bremer and Miley Wang from the University of Hawaii. And Michael Constantinidis is going to give us a little bit of an introduction. Michael?
Yes, thank you, Susan. And Miley, I beg your pardon. I didn't know you would be speaking today, so I didn't have anything prepared, but I did have a brief intro for Leah. So Leah, maybe you could help out and fill in that part when it comes the right time. But it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Leah Bremer, currently serving in roles including co-director of the Environmental Policy and Planning Group at the UH Economic Research Organization and Associate Specialist of Environmental Management at the UH Water Resources Center. Dr. Bremer holds degrees including a BA in psychology from Northwestern University, MS in conservation biology from Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand, and Macquarie University, Australia as well, I believe, and a PhD in geography from UC Santa Barbara, San Diego State University. Dr. Bremer has been a principal and program director for a conservation innovation grant awarded by NRCS Pacific Islands area to the UH since about September of 2018. And that project title, or the project title for that grant, was Restoring Economic Services and Biodiversity Through Cost-Effective Resilient Agroforestry Systems. What was kind of unique about this project, it was conducted in conjunction with a very important community group member and partner in Kako'oiwi. I'm sure you'll hear more about that from Dr. Bremer. So there were UH faculty, students involved, the partners from Kako'oiwi and others. So with that intro, I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Bremer. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Michael, and thank you for your support over these years, and thanks to NRCS. And there's Miley. So I am going to talk about Miley in the presentation before she speaks, but Miley is an undergrad at UH Manoa majoring in life sciences and Hawaiian studies, and she's been such an important part of our project. More than anyone on our team, she's on the ground. She's really breathed life into the project and is an amazing person and collaborator on the project. So I asked her to join me on the presentation just to give some insight on the current management directions and sort of the context of Pu'ulani. So thanks for joining, Maile. So sorry, I opened the share tray. Does that work? Can you see my screen now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. So again, thanks for having us here today, and a huge thanks to NRCS for the opportunity for this Conservation Innovation Grant. It really allowed us to get this applied conservation and research project off of the ground. And it was a really unique opportunity for us to get this really what's turned into a long-term exciting project. So we're just going to give you a brief overview of what we've done. And really what I'm going to be talking about is a story of transformation at a place called Pu'ulani, which we're going to talk a lot more about at Kako'iwi in the Ahupua'a of Heia. And we were able to, through this grant, as well as other funding sources, restore what was a dominantly non-native forest, almost 100% non-native forest cover with Java plum and fiddlewood and other non-native species, and transform it into a culturally, ecologically, and increasingly economically valuable agroforest, where thousands of volunteers come to help restore this system. So this has been a real collaborative effort. This is our official project team. So on the left here, we have our students on the project, and I'm gonna go into a little more detail about 3 of the students here, but we have Angel Malone, Maile Wong, Zoe Hastings, and then more recently, Matt Kaho'ohanohano and Tressa Hope, who have really been fundamental to this project, both the management and the research. And then my co-Is on the project, co-PIs, are Clay Trowernicht with Natural Resources and Environmental Management, Tamara Tickton with the Department of Life Sciences, and then also Kavika Winter with the Heia NER has been a big part of this project. And then at Kako'iwi, really all of the staff have contributed in different ways, but kind of the main staff we've worked with is Nick Rapoon, the farm manager at Kako'o, Mahealani Botello, who had played a really important role in the design of the project, and then the executive director, Kanekoa Kukea Schultz. And and Michael, I also added you to our team slide just to recognize how much you have helped us and supported this project from the beginning, which was now over 4 years ago. So I did want to just take a moment to give an extra shout out to these 3 students that have worked on the project. Angel Malone, who got her master's from NREM in 2020, she led the soil carbon component of this project, which was a huge endeavor. And she also was out there weeding and planting and continues to come back. This is her harvesting lolu from the site several weeks ago for a really important event. And then Dr. Zoe Hastings, who got her PhD through this project. And a lot of the ideas here really came from Zoe with the functional trait restoration and some of the participatory design. I can't say enough how many hours she spent at Kako'iwi. This is her with a van full of palapalai that we planted a while back. She is on vacation right now, so can't join us, but she's a wealth of knowledge for agroforestry and continues to work in this space as a postdoc. And then, of course, Maile, who's here with us, she is out at Kako'o so much of the time. She's really by Kako'o considered part of Kako'o, even though she's technically on the UH team. She's really built a long-term bridge there and has brought so many people into the space, and really through her energy and hard work really made this project so much more than I think we all ever imagined. Also want to thank, we've had thousands of volunteers come out. These are just a few of the photos over the years from Keiki to Kupuna, different classes, all kinds of folks have come out. This up here is a picture of our first work day where we planted in the beginning of 2019. We had over 200 volunteers just in one day. And a mahalo to our funders. I'm going to be talking particularly about this Conservation Innovation Grant, which really was fundamental to getting all of this on the ground and getting projects started. We have been able to get some supplementary funding from UH Social Science Research Institute, NREM, the UH Sea Grant College Program. ZO is funded by the National Science Foundation, and then the Kaulunani program with DOFA has also supported this work. And if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. I know on this Zoom space can be a little bit unidirectional, so hoping that we have some time to talk story afterwards. But so with our Conservation Innovation Grant, we really had 3 objectives. One was to design, implement, and monitor 10 agroforestry demonstration plots and buffer areas in Heia, Oahu. 2, publish peer review and practitioner-oriented material on agroforestry, functional traits, and ecosystem services. And then 3, carry out 2 agroforestry workshops. And I will say through this project, I both learned to be ambitious and also learned what it means to overpromise. And so we managed to, I think, achieve and exceed these objectives, but we did need to leverage other sources because this was a relatively modest grant, and we were so excited that we promised a lot that ended up requiring resources beyond what we had. So this first objective, and this is really the core of our work, was again to design, implement, and monitor 10 agroforestry demonstration plots and buffer areas in Heia. So our partner in this, as Michael alluded to, is Kako'oiwi, a nonprofit that works in the Ahupua'a of Heia. This is also part of the National Estuarine Research Reserve, which includes 2 nonprofits, Pai Pai o Heia, the fish pond, which many of you have probably been to, and then Mauka of the Reserve and Mauka of Kako'oiwi. There's another nonprofit, Papahana Kua'ola. Kako'oiwi's mission is to perpetuate the cultural and spiritual practices of Native Hawaiians. And one of their main activities thus far has been to restore lo'i kalo systems. And our team first engaged with Kako'oiwi in an analysis that the executive director asked us to do, looking at the multiple benefits of lo'i restoration. So looking at the cultural, environmental, and economic outcomes of lo'i kalo restoration in Heia. And from this work, we then also were interested in agroforestry systems as sort of an interest of our broader research group, and also an interest of Kako'oiwi. So you can see here, this is their master plan from 2011 that probably needs to be updated, but shows kind of what they're thinking for their 400-acre parcel that they lease from the Hawaii Community Development Corporation. So they have their lo'i kalo down here, and then all in these Mauka forest areas, which are currently non-native forests, they do have in their plan a hope to restore to agroforestry and forest restoration in some areas. And so they were really interested in a pilot agroforestry project that they could learn from and adapt to their broader Mauka area. And they were also interested in exploring what to plant and how to restore for multiple ecological, cultural, and economic objectives. So, and as a reminder, agroforests were historically abundant in Hawaii. They are an indigenous practice. This is a study done by Natalie Kurashima, who is part of our broader research team. She now works for Kamehameha Schools, but her dissertation modeled the potential extent of indigenous agroecological systems across Hawaii. This is a zoom in on Oahu, and the green is the potential areas that were used for colluvial or sloped agroforestry systems. So you can see that they were abundant, and she projects that they likely produced even more food than lo'i systems. And while there's not a ton of of agroforestry today, there is widespread interest in restoration and pockets of biocultural restoration in particular going on across the state. And so as you all know, mixed agroforestry is also a very important NRCS practice. And from an NRCS technical note on mixed agroforestry is considered closed canopy forest with high diversity, with a principal purpose to provide ecosystem services and without a focus on commercial production. So more managed as a resource conservation area. And this description fits our project. And so we had this opportunity to work with NRCS to achieve both the goals of creating a mixed agroforestry demonstration site and also working with Kāko'o Iwi to create a restoration site that is in line with their values as an organization. So I'm going to hand it over to Maile now to introduce the site where we are doing the restoration. So take it away, Maile.
So the combined Kāko'o, Iwi, and UH team settled on Pu'ulani as the pilot restoration site for this mixed agroforest. And there were two principal reasons that it was selected. The first was that it's accessible by foot and by vehicle. So this allows community as well as workers to access that area readily. And also it's within the focal restoration area that where Kāko'o is actively managing. Sorry, next slide, please. And Pu'ulani means, if you break it down, Pu'u means ridge and Lani means heavens. And so when we were thinking about the site, we recognized it as an elevated space and thought about what it might have been used for in the past, and thought that it would likely be used as a point for kilo, as forests in the past didn't have as many tall trees. So the Kāko'o staff saw this space as a place that's elevated. And in Hawaiian thinking, we have three picos. Our piko I is the one at the top of our head that connects us to Akua and Kupuna. It's our spiritual connection. And then piko O is where our umbilical cord is. And then piko A is what connects us to future. And so since Lo'ikalo is the main focus right now of Kāko'o's restoration, they saw that as feeding Piko A or our present, or Piko O or our present. And then they wanted a space that would feed Piko I. And they envisioned Pu'ulani, we all envisioned Pu'ulani as a place for knowledge sharing, a place to gather, a place that helped us build community, and also a place for ceremony. And so we prioritized accessibility for community and planted plants for those functions. Next slide, please. And so, yeah, this is just an example of what Pu'ulani looked like before, with the predominant Java plum fiddlewood and octopus tree overstory, as well as like Wadelia and Maile Pilau in the understory. And then this was at the beginning of this year, and we have a whole mix of native and economically important trees here, including Pualualo, Koa, and then understory Nane and Ili'e, as well as Aveoveo. And in the back, you can see some mahogany too that we've planted in the buffer. And that's kind of what the site is right now, and kind of how we came to that. But there's a huge collaboration that happened before I arrived. And so I'll turn it back over to Leah to kind of explain that process. Thanks.
Yeah, I think you're on mute.
Huh. Thank you. That's good to know that I was on mute. So I was saying that the first thing we did for this dimension of our work at Kāko'o, and so just to say that, again, we had a relationship for years with Kāko'o before this, but the first thing we did, and this was really led by Zoe Hastings as part of her dissertation, was to come up with a collaborative design process, as Miley mentioned. And so the first part of this was to come up with the shared goals for Pu'ulani. So with the Kako'o team, as well as the Heia Nur, the three main goals for Pu'ulani were: one, to support community connections to the forest and to each other; second, to increase community access to native and other plants for hula, medicine, and other uses; and then three, to provide ecosystem services, particularly water retention, carbon storage, and sediment retention. So the next part of the collaborative design process that Zoe led with Kako Iwi, particularly with Mahelani Botello, who was the main steward of Pu'ulani. So the design process involved a combined participatory process with a functional trait approach. And I'll talk a little bit about functional traits in a minute. But we ended up focusing on two treatments, so two different types of agroforestry. One focused on erosion control and one focused on early succession. And these were tied to two of Kako'o's ecological goals, as well as aligned with ecological processes that we had enough data to focus on. And within these two treatments, we selected plants with biocultural value, and that was primarily done by Mahelani and Kako'o. Oops, sorry. Sorry, oh, and then this is just to see, we have a paper on this that Zoe led and was part of her dissertation that you can read all about this process. It was published in Conservation Science and Practice. So just a little bit about functional traits. So functional traits are considered the dimension of biodiversity that's most directly related to ecosystem functioning. So for example, leaf size has an important influence on how much rainwater reaches the ground and how much erosion occurs. So the functional traits that we used relate to these two treatments. So the first, erosion control functional traits that have been shown to affect erosion are leaf area, root type, clonality, whether the plants are mat forming, and plant roundness. And then for early succession, traits are leaf area, wood density, seed mass, and nitrogen fixation. So Zoe used these traits to come up with a list of over 100 species that would fit into these different treatment plants. And then from that list, Mahelani and Kako'o chose which plants to actually include in the restoration. So the plants that were in erosion control, and these were again the ones that were on that list and that Kako'o chose, are plants that have fibrous roots, big leaves, clonal spreading, and are round shaped. So we had Ohia lehua mamo, Pohinahina, Iholena lele, a Hawaiian variety of banana, A'ali'i, comfrey, Aki-Aki, Ahuava, and Kupu-Kupu. And these are overstory, midstory, and understory plants. And for early succession, Koa, Pu'alo'alo, Aveoveo, Mamaki, Uhaloa, Nanea, Pu'uka'a, and Ili'e'e. And then across both treatments, we included 4 plants that weren't within one of these functional trait categories, but were very important to Kako Iwi. So they wanted to look at their survival under these two treatments, or two kind of ohana of plants. And so we had here Ohia lehua ahihi, the Oahu variety of ohia. We had Ava, Palapalai, and Maile. I just wanted to show you really quick. Do you see my screen that's showing the species cards? No,
Not yet. It's loading.
not. Okay.
There you go. Yeah.
I just wanted to show you these, and this is all available. It's linked to in our final report. Miley put these together. They're cards that talk about the cultural and ecological significance of all of the plants that were planted. And this is a sort of living project as we add different species that Miley is going to be talking about. We'll be adding cards, but this has been a great resource for learning and for education at Kako'o. So all the plants, have their mo'olelo, have their stories, and there's a real reason why they're there. Okay. Are we back to my PowerPoint? Yeah. I can't see anybody's faces, so.
Yeah. You're back. You're back.
Awesome. Okay, so then we set up plots, and this is Nick Rapoon really helping Zoe to set up these experimental plots at Pu'ulani. So these were done in an ecologically robust way, but also within the constraints of the space we had on the ridge. So set up 10 12 meter by 15 meter plots, so 5 per treatment. We also included 1 control plot. Ideally, you'd have more control plots, but we didn't. It's not practical to keep a lot of area outside of production or restoration. So the control plot is, we do continue to take data from it, but it really is an interesting visual to see what it looked like before. And then we have 1 unfenced plot that we added in year 2. Our original proposal, we were going to test the difference between fenced and unfenced projects, but that ended up not being what Kako'o EV wanted to do. In the end, they really wanted to have a fence around all of the plants in the first couple of years because of the plants that were chosen. So we ended up shifting and moving towards looking at 2 different types of agroforestry, but we did add the unfenced plot to have that, so we could look at that difference a little bit, and we did not find a big difference. And then within each of the plots, we have 6 subplots where we take a lot of we take our soil and understory data with a total of 30 2 meter by 2 meter plots per treatment.